Hello everyone and welcome to my beginner's guide for the newest addition to the Wild Rift roster. We're going to be talking about the missing link Gnar. Now Gnar is a Baron lane champion who has a very safe playstyle. He has both ranged form and melee form. He has a great amount of mobility and lots of crowd control with his Mega Gnar, which can turn a team fight in an instant. We're going to be running through all the abilities, the leveling order, and right at the end, we're going to be showing off a build. If you want to skip to any part of the video, timestamps will be in the description for you to check out. First, let's go through the abilities. Now, we're going to go from Mini Gnar first. We're going to talk about all of Mini Gnar's abilities, and then we'll talk about all of Mega Gnar's abilities. So there's quite a few abilities to go through, but I'll try and make it all as simple as possible because, as you can tell, there is a lot of text. There is a lot of text, and maybe some of you don't want to do the reading for this text. So first, let's talk about Gnar's main playstyle and main ability, really, which is his passive. Now, Gnar doesn't have a mana bar. He can use his abilities as much as possible. Instead, he has a rage bar. Now, he can generate rage by attacking minions, attacking champions, and even landing abilities on minions and champions. And when you generate rage, when that goes up to full, you can turn into Mega Gnar after 4 seconds or after using an ability. In Mini Gnar, you gain the movement speed, extra attack range, and the attack speed. And in Mega Gnar, you gain the extra health, you gain resistances as well, so armor and mag resist, and you also gain extra attack damage. But of course, in Mega Gnar, you'll be in melee form, whereas Mini Gnar, you'll be in range form. Now, when you're raging and when you're building up this rage, if you don't attack an enemy champion, or if you go back to base and for the next 13 seconds you don't do anything, you actually lose rage over time. So if you want to keep stacking up your rage, especially when a team fight is about to start, you need to keep on attacking either minions, monsters, anything that you have close by to try and build up your rage bar. And this is such a big concept and a big kind of thing to understand and master, is how we build up our rage and when we build up our rage. Because as soon as you come out of Mega Gnar and you go back into Mini Gnar, you won't be able to regenerate rage for the next 15 seconds. So if you waste that window of when you reach to Mega Gnar and when you reach that maximum rage and you turn into Mega Gnar, if you waste that, then you're going to be back to Mini Gnar. And Mini Gnar is very useless in fights compared to Mega Gnar, because Mega Gnar has these huge, massive amounts of abilities. But as I mentioned, when you're auto-attacking, when you're using abilities there, you can see the rage bar underneath. It's the white bar. And if you keep on attacking, you keep on moving, eventually that rage bar will turn full, and the next ability you use will turn into Mega Gnar. And then you'll be in Mega Gnar for a few seconds. But again, if you waste this duration because you have so much CC with your second ability and your ultimate, you'll turn back to Mini Gnar, which we'll see in a second, and I won't be able to gain any rage for the next few seconds. You can see here, even if I'm auto-attacking using abilities, I cannot generate rage. So it's really important to understand and master when to build up rage and when kind of understanding when a team fight is going to start, because you need to build up that rage basically as quick as possible when that team fight is about to start. Now let's go into Mini Gnar's first ability, which is the boomerang throw. So Gnar throws a boomerang that deals physical damage and slows enemies for 40% for 2 seconds. The boomerang also returns Gnar after hitting an enemy champion, dealing a little bit of damage, and catching the boomerang reduces the cooldown by 40 seconds. This is your main poking ability and your main damaging ability during the early game. You can also use this to wave clear as well. Now, as you can see, this ability does have a very long range, but you do have to bear in mind that it will stop on the first unit hit. So whether that be a champion, whether that be a minion, it will stop on the, I should reduce the cooldown. It will stop on the first enemy hit. So if you want to hit an enemy champion that's all the way back here, it's going to stop, as you can see, and it will go all the way back. But if you throw it over here, you can see it can go the maximum range. Now, catching the boomerang is going to be very important to reduce the cooldown. Again, Gnar doesn't have any mana, so you don't have to worry about using your abilities and time your abilities over and over again. And it, you know, generating your rage bar in the early game is quite nice. But how does the direction work on the boomerang? Well, it works in the direction when Gnar is walking. So if I throw my boomerang, if I walk to left, you can see the boomerang will go towards the left. If I throw my boomerang and go towards the right, the boomerang will go to the right. If I move forward or backwards, it will just go in a straight line in a general direction. So you have to really bear this in mind when you're in the laning phase, and if you're walking from left to right, again, catching a boomerang will reduce the cooldown by 40%, which is quite a lot during the early game, because as you can see, it has a 16-second cooldown during the early game. So reducing your cooldown of boomerang again allows you to poke, sustain, do a bunch of damage, and will help you out a lot during the early game and trying to poke as much as possible. The second ability, Hyper. Now, the interesting thing about Wild Rift is that Hyper's mini Gnar has an active, which you gain attack speed for 6 seconds. Now, it's not 50% attack speed right at the start. It's actually 35 seconds, and it has a pretty long cooldown. As you can see, it has a 20-second cooldown during the early game. But you get an attack speed on your second ability as an active. Sounds pretty damn insane for Gnar. I mean, I already think that Fleet Footwork is going to be very powerful for the double auto attacks. So you can actually proc mini Gnar's passive or Hyper, which we're going to talk about now. So every third attack or ability in this on the same enemy deals additional damage plus a percentage of the target's maximum health, which means Gnar's going to be very good against these tanks and bruisers that are building a lot of HP, and also grants him movement speed. So when you're auto attacking with Fleet Footwork, when you're using your abilities and trying to land your first ability, then you'll be able to do a lot of damage overall, and you can keep proccing this over and over again as well. You can keep auto attacking, you can keep proccing this over and over again. So I auto attack 3 times, and then look, I can auto attack 3 times again. There is no cooldown on the passive of your second ability. You can keep proccing this over and over again. Again, you have the extra attack speed as well with your second ability as I turn into Mega Gnar soon. But as you can see, there's no cooldown on the passive part on your second ability, so you can keep proccing this during the early game. And this is what makes Gnar a very safe champion in the Baron lane, because when you're against these bruisers and when you're against these champions that don't have a lot of gap closers and don't have a lot of dive potential onto Gnar, you can use the range as your advantage, and you can use the extra damage as your advantage as well. So a very, very strong ability in Mega Gnar. And as I mentioned, Mini not having an active on Wild Rift is new. He doesn't have an active on PC League. He only has an active on his Mega Gnar, which is really, really interesting and makes it, I guess, pretty cool as well. But the extra movement speed you get from the second ability will work with Fleet Footwork. It's going to work with Phage as well, because you're going to be building Trinity Force and Black Cleaver in your build. So you can imagine how much movement speed you're going to be getting in Mini Gnar, and it's going to be very, very difficult to try and lock you down. Now let's talk about third ability, Hop. So Mini Gnar leaps to a target location, and if Gnar lands on a unit, he will bounce on that unit, traveling even further in the same direction. It deals damage and also briefly slows the unit that you land on. So your third ability, you can see here you have the big circle, which is where Gnar is going to be jumping, and then you have the mini circle after that, which Gnar hops to. Now, to note, you can't hop twice. So if I land on this target dummy here, you can't hop again twice. That'd be pretty damn broken, to be fair. But this ability is actually really cool, because being able to hop on an enemy champion and get behind enemy lines is really interesting. But also you can use it to escape. You can use it to jump away to safety. You can use it to jump over walls. But one very big tip that I want to give to you with your third ability is this is one of the main abilities you want to use to turn into Mega Gnar. So if I quickly rack up my rage bar really quickly, the great thing is that when you turn into Mega Gnar, you are still going to have the mini Gnar hop afterwards. You see here, look, hop, boom, and I'm straight onto the back line. That means I can use my ultimate up against the wall. I can use my second ability and even my first ability, and it makes such a big difference. It offers that surprise factor that Gnar players really, really needs. You can hop again, as I mentioned with the passive. The next ability you use when your rage bar is full, you turn into Mega Gnar, and the hop will still work because technically you're still in Mini Gnar and you're transforming into Mega Gnar. So as you use the hop, you're transforming to Mega Gnar, you get onto the back line, you get a huge, massive ultimate. So really, really important to make sure that you keep an eye on that, especially in team fights, because it gives you access to the back line if you can jump on tanks or someone in the front line as well. So very, very cool. It does have a very long cooldown though in the early game. You can see 21-second cooldown in the early game. So just be careful when you're using this as an engaged tool and you're jumping forward, because 21-second cooldown, if you jump on top of an enemy champion, you go behind enemy lines in the laning phase, and then suddenly you get ganked, you're going to be dead. You're pretty squishy when you're playing in Mini Gnar, so you do have to be very, very careful. And then Mini Gnar's passive with the ultimate, you don't actually have an active with your ultimate on your I just realized I don't have the fourth button for some reason. That's gone. That's disappeared for me. That's weird. You don't have a ultimate on Mini Gnar. You only have an ultimate on Mega Gnar. You just have a passive on Mini Gnar, which basically means that your hyper movement speed bonus gets increased to 65%. So, hey, even more movement speed to be a big nuisance. Right, let's talk about Mega Gnar now. So Mega Gnar's first ability you're going to throw a boulder instead of a boomerang. This will deal physical damage as well and slow the target when they get hit and nearby champions. And picking up the boulder within 5 seconds reduces its cooldown. Now, the big thing to note is that when you transform from Mini Gnar to Mega Gnar, or vice versa, when you go back from Mega Gnar to Mini Gnar, the other let me explain this as simple as possible. The other version can pick up the other ability, if that makes sense. So if you're in Mini Gnar and you're about to go into Mega Gnar can catch the boomerang and it will reduce the cooldown of the boulder. So each ability works hand in hand. So if your second ability is on cooldown, then your second ability is also going to be on cooldown when you go into Mega Gnar. So you're transforming, but the abilities don't refresh. So if you're jumping in, if you use boomerang or if you use your boulder and then you turn back into Mini Gnar, you have to pick up that boulder to reduce the cooldown of your first ability. Let me see if I can quickly reiterate that. But I can also show you the first ability as well as we go into Mega Gnar. As you can tell, this is going to take quite some time. But we go into Mega Gnar, you can see the first ability here. Boom, you just throw a boulder out. If you walk over it, you pick it up, you reduce the cooldown. You can see Gnar just blinks ever so slightly. You throw it, pick it up, and you're able to do it. So if I throw my boulder, I turn back into Mini Gnar. Mini Gnar can actually go and pick up the boulder, and then this will reduce the cooldown of your boomerang, and vice versa. Boomerang could be picked up by Mega Gnar. But in general, the boulder is a lot slower than the boomerang, and it's a lot harder to hit as well. The animation is also a lot slower. So most of the time you want to use a boulder to either clear minion waves or to chase enemy champions. It does still have a long range. It doesn't come back to you either. So boulder is basically used to throw, slow enemy champions, and try and catch them up. Second ability, really huge actually, the second ability, because the great thing is that you'll be able to lock down enemy champions for a long amount of time with Mega Gnar's second ability and also the ultimate. So Mega Gnar's second ability smashes down in the area in front of him, dealing physical damage in the area and stunning champions for 1.25 seconds. And you also gain Hyper's passive movement speed. So what you're able to do is you're able to CC enemy champions for a long amount of time, because if you can chain it correctly, you could do your second ability straight into your ultimate. So you could do this second ability straight into ultimate, and you chain CC them for a long amount of time. You saw how long that target dummy was stunned. Second ability, wait for the stun to finish, straight into ultimate. Stun after stun over and over again. And this is what I was talking about when I was saying how Gnar has a lot of crowd control. Again, the second ability doesn't have the biggest amount of range, so you do have to stand quite close. But if you stand quite close and if you don't want to jump all the way into the backline with your hop, another great ability to use is your second ability. Second ability instantly uses the Mega Gnar version when your rage bar is full. You use second ability into your ultimate, you do a bunch of damage, and also you stun them for a long amount of time. It means you can follow up with your third ability and your boulder and just do a bunch of damage. So shorter range, but very effective because you can chain your CC and do a crazy amount of damage. But it does lock Gnar in place, so you do have to be very careful. So when you're using your second ability, it's going to lock you in place for that time. So you need to make sure that when you use the ability, you're not going to be vulnerable. So when you use the ability, you cannot move or use other abilities, you see? And when I'm using my second ability, I'm locked in place for the animation, which it does have an animation for quite a long time. So you do have to be careful when you're using this ability, because if you get engaged on as you're doing the animation, then you might get caught out and you might get die for that one. But in general, very good to try and chain the second ability of Mega Gnar and the ultimate at the same time. Third ability of Mega Gnar is basically the same as the mini version. You just leap to target location, you do damage. After landing, you do a bunch of damage, and then enemies, Gnar lands directly on top of them and you slowly brief champions. That's basically it. It's the same version. The only thing is you can't hop with Mega Gnar, you just jump. To be fair, I will show you the Mega Gnar distance with the third ability, because I think a lot of you would be surprised how far you can jump with Mega Gnar's third ability. So I just quickly jump here. Look how far you can jump with Mega Gnar's third ability. I don't know, but this is like a crazy long range. Like I can jump here. I can, whoops. I can jump here and then Mega Gnar this guy into the wall. Like, I don't know. Mega Gnar's leap does seem very foreign. I hope they nerf it, to be fair, because that's going to be very, very scary. But yeah, it's basically very similar to Hop. As you can see there, if casting Hop, you transform into Mega Gnar. Mega Gnar will pounce off until he lands on a further target. So this is what I was talking about with the tip I was saying with the third ability. And then, of course, you have his ultimate. Gnar is the make or break, really, for Gnar. It's kind of weird because the ability is called Gnar, and Gnar is the champion name. This will win you team fights and also lose you team fights. If you're able to get, you've probably seen a lot of clips of PC League of Legends with Gnar getting a 5-man ultimate onto the backline, pushing everyone up against the wall and changing a team fight in an instant. This is exactly the same as what's going to happen on Wild Rift as well. You always have to keep an eye on this if you're playing against Gnar. The Rage Bar, if he has his ultimate available, because he can turn the fight in an instant. Now, the big thing to note with his ultimate is that knocking enemies into a wall will deal damage and also stun them instead of slowing them. Now, this means most of the time what you're going to be doing with Gnar's ultimate is you're going to be manually casting it. And I've already tested it out already. The game actually doesn't indicate if there's a terrain close to you. So sometimes if you auto cast the ultimate, you're not actually going to be hitting, you're not going to be pushing the enemy champion towards a wall, so you actually might not stun them. So you need to be very, very careful. So for example, not this target dummy here, because this guy is way too close to the wall. If I take like this target dummy, for example, that's standing right here, actually I'm not too sure if it will indicate that one as well, but if I just press my ultimate when I turn into Mega Gnar eventually, if I press my ultimate, okay, it detects the other one. I need to get rid of the target dummies. Remove target dummies onto this one. So if I do this target dummy, you can see it pushes his back. But if I put a target dummy in the exact same place, I can actually push him against the wall and look, and stun him. So it's not optimal to just press Gnar's ability. The best way to use it, or the best way to use Gnar's ultimate, is to manually cast it every single time, because you need to make sure, and I cannot stress this enough, you need to make sure that you land the ultimate and you hit enemy champions up against the wall. If you just knock them back into your team, they can flash away, they can dash away, they can do all this sort of stuff. It's a million times better to stun them up against the wall. That means you can follow up with your second ability to chain that crowd control, as I was talking to you about, and also allow the rest of your team to follow up and do a bunch of damage. So really important to make sure that with Gnar, you use your ultimate up against the wall every single time. And this kind of comes down to the combos as well. Again, I kind of talked to you about a combo already with your second ability and then chaining that with your ultimate. Again, as you can see here, I'm going to always manually cast my ultimate to make sure that I stun the enemy champion up against the wall. Again, here, I can push these champions here and stun both of these into my first ability. There's not really that many combos for Gnar, to be fair. The big one is the hop that I was talking to you about with your third ability, making sure that you can jump, double jump, and then turn into Mega Gnar and use your ultimate. Other than that, not really too much combos to talk to you about. Again, it's all about your ultimate, making sure that you get your ultimate there and stun them up against the wall. Sorry, excuse me. Leveling order. No surprise that you're going to be leveling your first ability at level 1. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised about that. It gives you poke, it gives you range, it gives you damage, and it also allows you to wave clear and try and get level 2 before the opponent. You want to go for your second ability second. Again, you get the extra damage when you hit an enemy champion with auto attacks and abilities 3 times. You also gain the active as well now, so you gain the extra attack speed, which is great. You can turn into a complete lane bully, which is pretty scary. And level 3, you get all your basic abilities to make sure they're available. The ability you want you to max first is your first ability, because this will give you a crazy amount of damage overall. If I go on to the ability itself, you can see there you got the boomerang damage that goes from 15 to 65 to 115 to 165. So the damage gets insane, the cooldown gets lowered by a lot, the slow as well at the same time. The ability is very important to max first. Then you're going to make sure you're going to max your second ability, because your third ability is basically for mobility. Your third ability is not for damage. So you want to max your second ability, making sure that you get the damage from your second ability as well. And then maxing your third ability, obviously making sure you level up your ultimate when possible. That is pretty much it for Gnar in terms of the abilities, the breakdown and everything as well. I'll quickly show you a build as well and some variations that I've got on a build that I'll be testing out tomorrow. If you do want to check out my live stream, I will be live streaming on YouTube and Twitch. I'll be live streaming pretty much the whole day, playing Gnar non-stop and trying to get as many Gnar games as possible, testing out different builds, different variations of the builds, and trying to get as much content of Gnar as possible. So this is the basic build. Actually, this was not the basic build because I changed the runes. This was the basic build. I'm pretty sure it was this. This is the build that the game gave you. It's not bad, to be fair. It's actually pretty decent compared to other champions that's released recently. I actually prefer the resolve tree though. I think resolve tree and barrel lane is just way too powerful. And then you can still get brutal anyway, which gives you the extra auto attack damage. In terms of the build first, for boots, you're always going to go defensive boots, whether you go for mercury treads or plated steel camps. Either one of these two are going to be very important. Boots upgrade, I haven't really thought about too much. I can see proto belt being very, very good because it gives you that extra dash to get into the back line to try and use your ultimate. But again, you got things like stasis, which are going to be very important when you're jumping into the back line. Or you can either go for some like QSS if you're against a lot of crowd control, because if you get crowd control in mini Gnar, then you're pretty much going to die straight away because you take a lot of damage. But yeah, defensive boots pretty important. Your core build is always going to be these 3 items. It's basically very similar to Ambessa: Trinity Force, Black Cleaver, Sterox Gauge. These are your 3 base items that you'll be building in every single game. There are some scenarios that maybe you skip out Sterox Gauge if they have like a lot of AD or AP damage, and you can go for a magic resist or an armor item instead. But your basic build is going to be these 3 items. Trinity Force, one of the best items in the game, gives you tank stats, gives you attack damage, gives you more movement speed as well with the Pharaoh passive. Spellblade passive as well. After you use your first ability or your hop, your next auto attack is going to be empowered to do more damage. And just overall crazy amount of movement speed and damage you get from Trinity Force. Black Cleaver, you reduce the enemy's armor, which means you do more damage. You also gain more movement speed as well. The movement speed from Trinity Force and Black Cleaver both stack on top of each other. So you got Trinity Force movement speed, Black Cleaver movement speed, second ability movement speed, fleet footwork movement speed. You can't have enough movement speed. You need more movement speed. But yeah, it makes it very, very difficult for enemy champions to try and lock down mini Gnar, which is great. And then Sterox Gauge gives you that extra base AD based on how much... Sorry, it gives you 50% extra of your base AD, which Gnar in general has a lot of base AD because he's a range champion as well as a melee champion. You also gain HP and also the lifeline passive to help you when you drop low on HP. Now, after these 3 items, this is where it becomes very, very flexible. There are so many items that you can build, and I'll talk through a couple of them now. Twin Guard is going to be great because you're going to be in team fights for a long amount of time, especially if you're poking at range with mini Gnar, trying to stack your rage as quick as possible. That means that when you get into Mega Gnar, you're going to have the enhanced version of Twin Guard. You're going to be getting the extra tenacity, the extra armor, the extra magic resist at maximum stacks. Because you're stacking with mini Gnar and you're going to be staying in fights for a long amount of time, you build up that rage bar, you get to maximum stacks, boom, you got Mega Gnar, and you have the active Twin Guard with maximum stacks. Very, very strong item that's going to be in the game. You also have Death Stance, which is also another great item, especially against AD champions. This helps a lot against burst damage when you're in mini Gnar. Again, as I mentioned, mini Gnar, very squishy. So if you build Death Stance, you have that extra resistance and extra reduced damage, reduced physical damage. Again, most of the time good against AD champions, not very good against AP champions, of course. Against AP champions, in terms of magic resist, you have Force of Nature. If you want to build a little bit more tankiness, you can go Force of Nature. This also gives you, again, more movement speed, which is great. More movement speed is great for Gnar, just to make it more difficult to kill, and also allows you to get into range to auto attack it Mega Gnar. You've also got things like more of Malmortius or Wit's End if you want more attack speed. I don't think Wit's End is going to be good because you already have a lot of attack speed with Fleet Footwork and also your second ability, but Wit's End is a great option, or you can also go for more of Malmortius. That's also another great option. Again, if you want more tankiness, you can go for items like Randuin's Omen, if I can find it, but I can't find it anywhere. There you go. Randuin's Omen, if you're against a lot of critical strike damage, this would be really good if you're against like a Yone or a Yasuo in lane, or if you're against a lot of crit damage. Again, you're very flexible. You can go like Randuin's Omen 4th item if you want to. You can go Twin Guard 4th item, which I think is going to be most of the time the general case. You can even go GA as well. There are so many different flexible builds for Gnar, and I think that's what makes Gnar so great. He's a versatile champion. He has range, he has poke, he has sustain. he has damage, he has crowd control. He's going to fit so well into this game. I've been very excited for this champion for such a long time. In terms of runes, you've got 2 rune options. Fleet footwork if you want to play aggressive, and if you want to poke enemy champions, this would be really good, especially if you're against tanks, because tanks don't have a lot of jump potential and they don't have a lot of gap closers to try and kill you in the early game. So you just abuse fleet footwork, you abuse your passive on your second ability, you keep auto attacking, you keep sustaining, and you keep dealing a bunch of damage. If you're in a bit of more of a difficult matchup, say you're against someone like a Yasuo or Yone or an Irelia that has gap closer for mini Gnar, you can go for Grasping Undying. You're still going to go for a little bit of HP, you know, 24 has HP, Xerx's Gage has HP, Black Cleaver has HP, and then you can go for tank items afterwards like Randuin's Omen, Force of Nature, etc. So you do still get the extra damage from Grasping Undying. It does give you the sustain during the early game, and you can also do a little bit of damage as well. So bad matchups, Grasping Undying. Aggressive matchups, Fleet Footwork. Very nice to go for. I think Fleet Footwork is going to be the main rune, but Grasp can also be good. Again, as I mentioned, we're going to be going for Resolve Tree. I just think Resolve Tree is a lot better than the Precision Tree, because to be fair, you don't need Last Stand, you don't need Giant Slayer, and you don't need Coup de Grace. You also don't need the extra attack speed, the extra sustain, or the tenacity either. So these 2 trees are basically dead for now. The only one you really want is Brutal. That's why you go for the Resolve Tree. You go for things like Nullifying Orb, which is going to be great for when you drop low on health, especially in the mini Gnar. You go for Bone Plating, and then you go for Overgrowth for the extra HP. You can also go Perseverance if you're against a lot of crowd control. And then for your secondary rune, you go for Brutal. The extra auto attack damage in mini Gnar is going to be great during the early game, and it can also help you do damage in the mid and the late game as well. And in terms of your spells, you've got Flash and you've got Ignite. Most of the time during the early game, you're going to be winning a lot of matchups because you have that range advantage, you have the extra poke. So when you turn into that Mega Gnar for the first time, you can look to engage with your third ability, you can jump in, stun with your second ability, throw your boulder out, auto attack a few times, and use your Ignite to try and get that kill pressure early on. That is pretty much everything for Gnar. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about Gnar. Let me know what you think of the champion down in the comments. Just a reminder, I will be streaming Gnar the whole day tomorrow, so make sure you tune in to either my Twitch or my YouTube channel. I will be streaming Gnar, again, testing out builds, testing out different things. If there's maybe a build or a certain rune that you think will be good on Gnar, let me know down in the comments. But I appreciate you all tuning into the video. I'm going to get some sleep because it's currently 1 a.m. in the morning, but I'll see you all tomorrow for a banger stream for some Gnar content. So I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.